I knew that the relationship was doomed just moments after I introduced my new boyfriend to my little sister. I'd met him about a month before, and as good Christian kids, our idea of a night out on the town was a cafe bar in the merchant city in Glasgow, which had incredibly patient staff. We must have seriously dented their Friday night takings, ordering mainly hot chocolates with the occasional Sol lager with lime in the neck for the handful of us over 18. We'd no more have ordered an underage beer than have stabbed the hipster barman in his waistcoat, but we would make it last 3 hours, and we would never ever tip. So that night, I found myself opposite the most astonishingly handsome guy I had ever seen. He had that floppy dark 90s hair, olive skin, and long-lashed grey eyes and lips just the right side of girly. I was wearing my 90s uniform of Oxblood Doc Martens, which were finally comfortable after a month of agonising breaking in, my black bodysuit with poppers at the crotch that would lead to a traumatic, frantic moment or two if you didn't time your toilet trip just right, and a flannel shirt tied around my waist. Normally, I was pretty awkward around boys, but something, maybe lust, took over that night, and I decided that this long-lashed boy was most definitely going to notice me. And whether it was just a hot chocolate sugar rush, something was working. He was laughing at my jokes, he was leaning in across the table, and I was pretty sure I'd caught him sneaking a glance down the front of my scoop neck. I debated whether the phrase fanny gallops was appropriate for 10 by 9, but actually, to be honest, there's no other more appropriate description for my 17-year-old reaction to this guy. And decidedly unchristian thoughts were filling my mind as I redid my lip gloss in the bar toilets. It was only when we got up to go, well and truly after I'd fallen in lust, that I realised he was probably just about scraping 5'3" despite his high-heeled cowboy boots. But I decided I could overlook that because pheromones or whatever, this new addition to our little group was decidedly interesting. So he and his friend at the end of the night drove us back home to the outskirts of Glasgow, where I was still living at home with my mum and dad. Counting Crows battled the exhaust sounds of the souped-up Fiat as we raced back along the M8 out of the city, and my heart was racing just as fast. His black hair tapered just above the neck of his Smashing Pumpkins t-shirt, and I wanted to reach out and touch it. So when we got back to my house, he opened his passenger door and flipped the seat forward to let me out. Don't fall out, try and look cool. He flashed me a smile and then asked if he could give me a call. Yeah, sure, I shrugged. And just for a moment, I felt as beautiful as Winona Ryder. So by 10 the next morning, he'd called the family landline on the number I'd scrawled on his hand. We had a few coffee shop dates and an ill-fated trip to see Forrest Gump, where I cried so much he had to go to the toilets to get me some more tissues, and a perfect first kiss in the tenement stairwell after a friend's party. And man, that boy could kiss. Back on my friend Jenny's futon that night, I touched my still tingling lips and smiled to myself in the light of the lava lamp. He wasn't the most interesting conversationalist. I'm not sure he'd ever read a single book, and the cowboy boots continued to make me feel a little bit queasy. But when he put his hands on my hips and pulled me in, I could forget all about that. So I invited the grey-eyed boy to my dad's birthday party, unaware of the drama that was about to unfold. I was beginning to toy with the idea that a relationship should probably not be based on tolerating someone's sheer dullness just to get to the kissing part, but also I wasn't quite ready to give up on that. I wonder if by inviting him to meet my whole family so soon after we'd started dating, I was passive-aggressively giving him the chance to dump me for being too full on. So he showed up on our front doorstep, a box of chocolates in hand, wearing his dodgy boots. My little sister opened the door, took one look at him, yelped in anguish, and ran upstairs to her bedroom not to be seen again for the duration of the party. And we were left on the doorstep, confused and awkward. What on earth had caused her to flee the scene? Well, as it turns out, she'd met that grey-eyed boy before. She was 5 years younger than me, and the previous summer she'd gone off to Christian holiday camp, where she'd developed the most enormous crush on one of the leaders. She and her friends had followed him like shadows, signing up for every activity he was leading and taking photos to be developed at the chemist when they got back, and they'd swooned over his red bandana worn Karate Kid style. I'd listened, sort of, as she told me all about him, and I'd looked, sort of, at the photos, and I'd smiled patronisingly before getting back to the dizzying heights of medical student life and kisses with boys in stairwells. As it turned out, the world of Christians in the west of Scotland was just too small for comfort, and it also turned out that finding out that my 12-year-old sister had fancied my boyfriend before I even met him felt a little bit icky for reasons I couldn't quite put my finger on. Maybe I suddenly saw myself less as the sophisticated seductress and more just a slightly older version of my little sister with a similarly superficial crush on the hot, dark-haired youth leader. The evening continued in much the same awkward vein, and although we limped on for another month or so after that, the end was in sight. Both realising that there was only so far the fanny gallops would carry us, we said our goodbyes over one last hot chocolate. In hindsight, and providing more evidence of the small world theory, the death of that relationship was also helped along by the fact that the boy that I would eventually marry, taller, blonder, better looking, much more interesting, and with significantly better taste in boots, was also at the party last night. And he was making me laugh in a way that I hadn't done for weeks. And, as it turns out, he was a much better kisser.
Oh, thanks very much, Gyda. That's so good. Magnificent. Have you ever met that fella again?
Once. It was super awkward.
Oh. Yeah. No shit.
He was still wearing the boots.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Your story is such a lovely shout out to the 1990s. I took a little list: DMs with bodysuits,
yep.
Lava lamps, counting crows, smashing pumpkins. Yep. It's wonderful. Yeah, nice callback to a great era.